My name's Reagan.
And my name is James. Did you guys know that there has been a 506% increase in violence over the past few years?
Wow, that's really crazy, actually. I'm pretty sure you've all heard about the mass shootings that have recently occurred.
I have. I wonder why there have been so many.
I've actually done some research on this, and scientists claim that there's a link between this violence with environmental factors and a rise in the amount of violence in video games.
Really? I love video games. I was reading something and it stated that mental illness has been linked to violence. Is that true?
I've heard that too, so I decided to do some research of my own.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
Well, approximately 1 in 5 Americans suffer from mental illnesses, ranging from anxiety disorder to dissociative identity disorder. But only 7.5% of these criminals actually committed violence, but only 7.5% of them actually had a mental illness.
Wow. There doesn't really seem to be any correlation there.
That's what I was thinking. So I went ahead and I researched two of the most popular disorders, but also the most misconceived disorders.
Right.
Many of you have heard of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
I have, yeah.
And some of you may actually have a family member suffering from one of these disorders.
One of my good friends actually suffers from bipolar disorder.
Wow, that's interesting.
Wait, people perceive those with bipolar disorder as violent?
It's hard to believe, I know. But only 2.6% of the population actually suffers from this illness. Bipolar disorder is an illness that causes fluctuations in the moods from a manic stage to a depressed stage. These stages can last anywhere from a week to a month, they kind of vary. But both of these actually involve very different behaviors. While in the manic stage, the individual is very very positive, full of energy, but they are also very, not very rational with their spending, and they usually do stuff that they wouldn't normally do, so it's not very good.
Well, that's not good. I bet it's better than the alternative state, though.
You're probably right. The depressed state doesn't really benefit the individual at all. They become down all the time, no effort to do anything, but there also have been reports of suicidal thoughts.
I definitely think the manic stage would be better to be in, but both of these sound miserable. Why is this disorder also mentioned when violence is brought up?
Because there are so many changes in a person's behavior, they often feel agitated with their mood and the fluctuations and not being able to stay in the stage that they want.
Right.
So while in the manic stage, they can become really aggressive, and when they're in the depressed stage, they have impulsive aggression. So both of these stages actually, though, can be easily controlled with medication. So
people with bipolar disorder are ultimately not a danger to other people?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, that's great news. I've also heard that schizophrenia can cause violence. Is this true?
Again, not necessarily. Like bipolar disorder, it causes mood swings in the individual, but schizophrenia also can have very different aspects on different people, varying from hallucinations to delusions.
Have you heard any studies claiming the link to both of these to be false?
I actually read something in the British Journal, and it stated there was no link. The amount of violence made responsible by individuals with schizophrenia falls below 10% of all criminals. The majority of these crimes actually committed by these people aren't due to their mental illnesses, but rather by substance abuses, usually with drugs or alcohol.
That's interesting. I guess we all created the stereotype of mentally ill, and that's how we all see them, when in fact, with the proper medication, they are all normal members of society just like us.
Exactly, and that's why there's so many issues with Americans always assuming the criminals are mentally ill,
Like what?
Well, for starters, it creates major stereotypes against these people. So we see these people differently. We discriminate on them in the workplace, in relationships, at school, anywhere we really run into them,
Well, that's not good. They're just like us.
It's awful to hear about, but it makes our job as Americans to make sure these stereotypes don't stick around,
Well, how can we do that?
That's a great question. Why don't we ask some people in the community?
I think the best way to eliminate discrimination against people with mental illness is to research their condition before we skip to conclusions.
One way to help end discrimination against people with mental illnesses is to help educate others. If we can find opportunities to pass on facts and positive attitudes, we can end the false ideas that people have with mental health.
In order to eliminate the discrimination of people with mental illness, we need to help society better understand what mental illnesses really are.
We can help stop discrimination against people with mental illnesses is to encourage a more open conversation about mental health as a whole.
Any of those.
Yeah, it's actually really cool to see how people and outside of us are interested in ending these discriminations, because overall, I mean, it'll help the world become a better place, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah.
I mean, I think just like us.
They're just like us. There's nothing different. And so, everyone watching this, it's kind of your job to make sure these discriminations last, because they're the same as us, no different. Their brain works a little bit differently, that's all. And it's not fair of us to go judging them for stuff that they can't really control.
It's true.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's up to you.
it's up to you.